Record to the cloud. Recording is in progress.
Great, okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go to mute.
My favorite thing about the pandemic is everybody's using different family members' iPads, Zoom accounts. So I feel like I've learned people's kids' names, spouses' names, pets' names.
Hey guys, Anthony Iano joined.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. I think folks are just starting to roll in. So Shankar did all the heavy lifting last year. I just had to show up and MC. But I feel like after 2 years of pandemic, hopefully have the hang of a Zoom meeting. So I think we'll give folks a few more minutes before getting started. But feel free to make small talk. I don't know. I just came from an in-person meeting at this co-working space that I'm hanging out at. So now I get to go to the virtual version of that. It's actually a lot better to be all virtual or all in person. This meeting was like 12 of us sitting around a big table, and then one poor soul whose flight got delayed on the Zoom. And of course he can't hear us and the internet's going in and out. And
Well, I have one important question. I want to know, Rachel, why did you not use real mortar for your brick wall?
Because this is a storage effort, not
I know.
archival storage effort, not a mortar effort.
I want to visit that brick museum. There's so many jokes, like, it's like a ton of bricks. It's built like a brick. Well,
Wait, I'm hastily checking your bios, but you guys are both art grads talking about.
we were in the same class together.
Julian and I went to high school together, actually. We've known each other a really long time.
Oh my goodness, high school and college.
Yeah. And since then.
So you both started the same year? You finished the same year?
Same,
Wow.
yeah. Both high school and college.
And we had the same, we were in the same, were we in the same freshman section?
Yeah. Yep.
That's right. Inseparable.
Yep. And AP history classes in high school in English.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's not saying a lot because we went to this public, it was Magnet Art High School. And if you weren't in the AP history class, you were really like learning impaired.
Right.
What high school did you go to?
LaGuardia.
LaGuardia High School for Music and Art.
I love that you have to refer to LaGuardia as if people don't know what it is.
Right.
It's not like there was a movie made about the high school or anything.
Well, honestly, in a generation, like, we were on the threshold because before we were the first class when it was called LaGuardia. Before then, it was Music and Art. So
Right.
I still have that like complex that like, oh, we're the posers,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome.
I'm an art and design grad.
Ah, so we were foes.
Yes.
I remember hearing when I was in grade school, they were like, they fight with like T-squares. Look out.
Maybe in my class, I don't know.
Hey, all, I heard something about music and art and design.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm an art and design graduate, so I'm with the A&Ders.
Oh,
All
really?
right. Well, unfortunately, we're with LaGuardia, but LaGuardia, because LaGuardia was 5 vocations of arts, which still astounds me because there's 5 different behavioral traits that have nothing to do with one another. So, we as the art majors, Rachel and I, have more in common with you art design students than we did with any of our other colleagues, frankly.
Were you there the same year as Irene Cara or separate?
As who? Irene?
Irene Cara, she's from the movie Fame, just.
Oh, no,
Oh,
we were, well,
no. But there were 6 people in our class at Cooper who went to LaGuardia, right, Julian?
was there really? Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, Anna.
Yeah, Anna, Luke,
Yeah,
Abby Williams,
Rachel Vine.
Rachel Vine.
Yeah, it
It's-
was a big, it was a
It was a big
move.
upset because everybody wanted to go to Cooper, of course. It was broke up some friendships. My best friend didn't get in, and he was a legacy student. He thought he was in like Finland, and
I thought we don't have legacies at Cooper, right?
I guess
That's-
not. But both of his parents had met at Cooper, and he was
Yes.
conceived at Cooper.
Oh, that's a lot of information as a kid.
Yeah. I don't think he was born at Cooper.
But it was, wow.
I'm 3rd generation, so
Really?
that makes me legacy or not.
It's one of the more frustrating things I have as a parent. I met my wife at Cooper, although we did not conceive any children during college. But my son absolutely loves architecture, despite my wife swearing to me as she graduated that she would never let our children become architects.
Oh, yeah.
But if he gets in, I at least as far as I know, it'll be on his own merits. It's one of the things I loved about being a student there, that we didn't have this legacies and we didn't have this, establishment. But on the other hand, as a parent, it would be such a wonderful thing to be able to, to know your kid got to go to the same place you went to. And
Well, at least there's some consolation when my son or my child becomes an architect. But like my father was a sculptor. When I told him I wanted to go to art school for sculpture, it was just like, there was no pride in that whatsoever. He was like, "Oh God damn it! I was going to retire on you."
And you know the saying, "Do as I say, not as I do."
Right. Well, I wish that he'd abide more, like spare the rod, spoil the child. Sent me to school to become a student teacher liaison.
Yeah.
so I think we could probably get started. My guess is after 10 minutes into the hour, we're probably not going to get too many more people. I don't remember how many folks joined last time, but I probably did not do as good a job promoting the Zoom as I could have. But we are recording this, as hopefully you guys saw. So everything will be posted to the CUAA website for folks to see as part of the election. But yeah, maybe just a quick get started. My name is Sim. I guess I show up here as Peter Cooper since I'm logged in with the Peter Cooper account. So hopefully I can do his legacy justice here. And I am the chair of the elections committee. Still learning a bunch about everything here, even though I helped out last year. And so the purpose of tonight really is just to give, I think, the 5 candidates who are running for contested posts. I know there's a number of other candidates who emailed, and we're excited to participate. We're happy to have you guys here and ask questions, or if you want to say a quick hi. I think the idea really is, though, for the folks where they're running against each other for the same position, to kind of talk a little bit more about their campaigns, so folks who are voting have a little bit more color and information. In any case, if it's okay with everyone, I actually thought I'd start with the faculty student and the faculty student liaison role first, since it's only 2 candidates, Margaret and Julian, and then we can move on to the the 3 alumni trustee candidates. And just format here, I'll be timekeeper, but a 3-minute, kind of quick bio on yourself and your interest in the role. And then I have a few questions prepared for you guys to sort of answer. And then if anybody else wants to ask any questions, you can raise your hand or put your question in the chat. Happy to read out the question as well. Cool. So I guess, and again, we're recording this. It'll be saved down on Zoom and then posted later on to YouTube in the next day or so. Cool. So why don't we start off with Margaret, if you want to introduce yourself real quickly and talk about your interest in and why you feel you're qualified for the faculty student liaison role on the council.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this evening. I have been involved with the Alumni Association for a very long period, about 9 years, and I've been involved with it in different capacities. I had been co-chair of events initially, and then I became involved with faculty student liaison, and eventually I was president and also alumni trustee. So I was nominated to run for this position, but I wanted to preface by saying that Julian has been doing outstanding work in this role, and typically the vice president faculty student liaison works very closely with a collaborator, a vice chair. And so I would be happy to participate in any capacity. The role involves meeting regularly with the deans, the faculty, the students. And my particular interest in running this year is that through the councils, we've learned that there's an interest in supporting the student body. And so this is a new sort of role, and you could say an enhancement of the previous definition of the VP faculty student liaison. And so I am very interested in that aspect, and I would consider continuing some of the initiatives that Claudia, who's the president VP faculty liaison, has initiated, as well as really strengthening the relationship between the CUAA and the Office of Alumni Affairs, because over the last 9 years, the topic of how students are engaged and brought into the Alumni Association, it's been sort of put aside a little bit. So we'd like to reestablish that relationship, and I'd be very happy to do that. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Margaret. Maybe just a couple of follow-up questions for me. So you talked a little bit about the need to improve, I guess, relationships between students and the Alumni Association, as well as with the, with the school itself. Any specific thoughts on how you plan to do that?
Sure. I think the best way of doing that is to actually have a formal monthly meeting with the Office of Alumni Affairs. And the past 3 years have really shown that they are more than willing to collaborate. And the issue really is they're a bit new, or they were 3 years ago, to the Cooper Union, and so they don't have some of the historical memory of how things were, say 10 years ago, and so it's just a question of re-engaging them and bringing their focus to the concerns of students, and that in itself is an interesting thing to consider and think about, because through my interface with various other academic institutions, I've, seen that particularly over the pandemic period, the students, young alumni and students have very specific concerns that they would like to see addressed. And I heard of some of them at the Cooper Union specifically. So I'll just mention a few, like I think from what I've learned so far, career mentorship, health and wellness, diversity and decolonization, and even swag, are very, which I think is related to identity, are very important topics for young alumni.
Cool. Thank you. I think we're just about out of time. I want to make sure we have time for the rest of the candidates, but thank you, Margaret. I guess, Julian, over to you. So maybe quick bio on yourself and your interest in the role, and go from there.
Firstly, Margaret is, a excellent candidate, obviously overqualified for this job. Frankly, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you guys. I'm kind of in this for the fun of it, and I don't, I didn't realize we're running a campaign. What are we talking about? How important do we think we are? I mean, for Christ's sakes, this is completely anonymous. There's only 9 people in the room. So I'm gonna just say that it's like, I'm not trying to make light of this, but let's not get too serious here. We're not going to like decolonize Cooper Union, honestly. But I was a student. I graduated in the art school in '93, and I've always been involved, and I'd had a lot of students who have worked for me as assistants over the years, and like Daniel Arsham was an assistant of mine, and which unfortunately didn't learn a damn thing. Look at that guy, he's a total failure. We'll hit him up for some big loans next year. Anyway, Don Blauweiss, because I was working in commercials, I'm just sort of jumping through my career I worked as an artist, and then I worked in commercials and film. And Don Blauweiss, who used to be in the Alumni Council, I don't know if anybody there knows him. I think he retired 10 years ago or so. He tapped me out of the blue. And he's like, hey, he sort of felt like there was a kinship between us because we both worked in commercials, and he said, you should join the Alumni Council. And I think that was back in 2009 or something, or maybe it was Jen Collins, but in either case, I served a couple of years back then, and I took the position of being the Alumni Council's rep to sit in on the art school's curriculum committee. And I'd been sitting on these curriculum committees for the last 13 years. No one said not to. And the role in that curriculum committee position is just sort of to be a fly on the wall, but to help sort of listen to teachers and make the teachers know that they're being witnessed. But over that 13 years, I know every teacher, my former teachers have all retired, and all the new teachers have come in, and there's been incredible sea changes at Cooper because of course, the school's financial crises, but also just the world has changed. I mean, the culture of Cooper has changed radically, and it's amazing to watch that. And also, so has the nature of the students. I mean, frankly, it's like a reign of terror with those students. These teachers are afraid for their jobs because they could be like canceled in 2 seconds. So these students, there's a student that sits on the curriculum committee that's got to vote. I mean, a voting body. This is like a sophomore. I'm an alumni. I don't even have a vote. So what I've begun to realize is that the role between the teachers and the students is very delicate. And as an alumni council member, we have a little bit more liberty to be able to speak frankly to students without worrying about getting fired. Mm-hmm. Over the last 13 years, I went to go sit in the Occupy student office with the kids that were sitting in the president's office. I've known many, and and they've known my face through the curriculum committee. And I like the students. I'm the only reason I'm doing all this is because I'm fascinated with the pedagogy of the art school and how it's changed. And I like hearing the discussions. I like watching the way the sausages are made. And I've also learned that our job is to really just to listen, to listen and to help lend counsel. But there's definitely been a schism between I mean, you guys certainly must know this. I mean, between the alumni, the Cooper Union Alumni Association and the schools, and I won't mince words, the art school does not like you guys. You know, they don't want to talk to you, you know, but I know Mike really well, and I know all those teachers well, and they've known me for 13 years, and I don't have any beef with them. So I think that I could be a good rep for you guys if you need one. I'm not entirely sure what this purpose is. You know, somebody said, "Hey, Julian, why don't you try this?" And I didn't realize I was going to be competing. I'm certainly not trying to take a job away from Margaret if she wants it that bad. I'm not looking for a whole ton of work, but it could be fun. And I like mending bridges.
No, thank you, Julian. Very, very interesting. I guess since, you know, Margaret talked quite a bit about, you know, kind of more engagement with the students, and Julian, you touched on the faculty side. I'd be curious to hear more of what you think we as an alumni association could do generally, or you in the role specifically, to maybe help increase the dialogue with faculty, because I feel like we probably don't hear as much from them as we should.
I think that I'm not sure exactly what went down, and I don't want to start any he says, she says, but you know, I think that over the course of the suits with the school, the alumni association and the teacher union and the teachers, I mean, maybe everybody wasn't on the same seeing eye to eye. I mean, everybody wants to save Cooper, but doing it in different ways. And I think that, you know, there's aspects of the alumni council is filled with a bunch of old curmudgeons that are making trouble. And that's problematic. You know, it's like, it dirties the works, and the school just wants to be a school and like be functioning. And they don't want the alumni council to come in and tamper, you know, with their structure. And I don't think that's really our role either. I mean, I think we should try to save Cooper, make it free, but, you know, like, let's be realistic about that aspiration. And then let's try to, you know, do what we're supposed to do as, you know, members of the alumni. We've graduated, and now we're just, you know, spokespeople for the alumni. And I think the things that we could do that the school could use, and has come up at the curriculum committee meetings, is that there isn't really like a comprehensive archive of all the artists that have gone to Cooper Union. That still blows my mind. It's like, you know, every year people are like, "Hey, did you know so-and-so went here?" Like, how could there be mysteries? How could that even be, like, how could there be people that are lost to time? Like, that's what we should be doing, is making sure that we have those things like collated, like the who's who of the here and now, and then the who's who of then in the past. Anyway, I don't have a big campaign speech for you guys. I just thought it would be interesting, and somebody said I should do it, and I was like, I don't really know if I really want this much work anymore. So how much work is this job? Because I don't want to bite off more than I can chew.
Well, I can't answer that, but I think we all appreciate your passion and enthusiasm for pitching in. Maybe before we switch over to the trustee candidates, does anybody here have any questions you want to pop into the chat or raise your hand for Julian or for Margaret, or should we move on?
I have a question.
Oh, George, why don't you go first? And then was that Rachel?
Yes.
I think you just have to unmute. Oh,
There you go.
Oh, finally got it. Julian, you mentioned the teachers being intimidated by the students.
Sure.
And what's the mechanism that would be used to get rid of the teacher in this intimidation?
I mean, honestly, it's a delicate time. I mean, thankfully, you know, I've got no objection to this, but there's a generational change in language. Well, just from just the various use of pronouns to just the way in which you talk about history or the way you teach art history. And that's one of the most interesting contested parts about the art school is how to teach art history. There's like they've completely restructured that program to quote unquote decolonize it, but the students today are woke. I mean, they are not missing a beat. And if you've got a teacher that makes a gaffe by accident, I'm not talking about someone being, granted, I don't think Cooper's ever had any teachers that are bad, but there's teachers that are old school, so to speak. And there was a teacher, I don't want to start, airing dirty laundry, but there was a teacher a couple of years ago that was asked to leave because he made a gaffe, but then it also turns out that maybe he had dated students in the past or whatever. It's just time for that kind of old guard to go. But it's the students that you can have a young, fiery student that can become a dangerous ideologue, just a sophomoric student that becomes a policeman that could decide that a teacher's got the wrong perspective, and then this teacher could be put on watch, could be docked. And I think that this art school is incredibly diverse now. I mean, it's changed. I think it's not. I mean, when we were students, Rachel, and I don't know how many other people on this meeting were from the art school. When I was a student there were like 3 female teachers and 2 teachers of color, or peoples of color. Now it's completely sort of divided, and it doesn't even have to be divided in that duality between white and black or male and female. It's like there are people of indiscriminate race and gender. So it's a new world there, and the students are conscious of that. And I think that's the interesting thing is it's not just a class, it's a generation.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better. I think teachers should be able to express themselves without worrying about being fired, and students should be able to express themselves without being worried about being kicked out. So now, this so-called sophomoric student who doesn't like the teacher, who does he go to the dean and said that teacher isn't acting right? The teacher can't get fired unless somebody in the school agrees with them.
Agreed. And I don't want to spread gossip, and I don't know all of the exact nuances of what happened 3 years ago, I think it was. But I think that now, certainly, never mind being fired, but what you might be comfortable teaching, like the content of what you're teaching. Like, I'll tell you one thing, they're not going to be teaching any Greco-Roman art history in the same fashion that we learned it. No one's reading Jansen. It's a new approach, and it's fascinating. I mean, the one thing I love about the curriculum council is I'm learning. I'm relearning to learn. I'm like, sorry, and I'm droning on.
Oh no, I'm gonna play my time cop role to make sure folks have an equal amount of time. Although I agree. I think this is a super interesting topic. I'm glad that you brought it up and whatnot. Rachel, did you want to ask your quick question?
Yes,
On to the alumni trustees.
Yeah, I had a question about, you've talked a lot about the art school. How are you working with the planning or working with the architecture and engineering schools? And is there any conversation to bring the conversation across the different schools is number one question. And then I identify with everything you just said because I work for a history museum and we're now dealing in a village, a small village, and now we're dealing with the hard truths. And I actually take classes and workshops on how to do this in the right way. So, and architecture is one of those areas. So I'm wondering how you see what your role going across the schools and engaging across the different curriculums.
Well, it was my understanding that there is also an alumni there's reps for the engineering and the architecture schools to this capacity. So I wouldn't, my position is not solely responsible for all three schools, right?
Correct.
I believe I'm more like an emissary for the art school, but maybe someone needs to explain this position to me better, because
Well, I'm asking the question because my perception is that there's not enough communication between the different, like if you have a counterpart, how are you working together? And I guess that's my question. What is?
well, to be perfectly honest with you, Rachel, it's like I'm gonna be figuring it out. If you guys elect me, I'll be figuring it out because I've not done this before. But
Okay,
one thing I can say is that I work in film and I am a total 100% extrovert people person. So I don't have any trouble breaking ice. That's one thing. And I'm learning to make sure that I use the right pronouns so I don't break any, any delicate consciences.
And thank you, yeah, Carol, we'll just post it in the chat, the clarification that the VP Faculty Student Liaison coordinates the reps to the different committees at the school. So it's a, I guess, coordination role, but I think it's something we'll all be pitching in on.
Right.
Great.
And I just want to interrupt for a second. That does not mean that Julian couldn't be the rep for the School of Art. Okay.
I mean, I will say, and I don't, this is my last thing I'm gonna say, because you guys have a lot of other things to talk about. Because I've been sitting on this curriculum committee for so many years, I have like a face-to-face relationship with all these teachers and the dean. You know, I watched Mike bust his ass to become dean. You know, it's like Mike and I were classmates. So I know we're friends. So I think I can help. I mean, I think I can honestly be useful to the alumni council because you need a friend on the art school connection, because there's some sort of, I mean, they're not interested in the alumni council because it's been problematic or something. I'm not sure what's going on. And Mike said, don't say anything, but I'm just telling you that because it's like, for whatever it is, we got to make sure that we make friends with the school. We're not trying to like, you know, take advantage of it or like, you know, get exhibitions for ourselves or, you know, whatever they think is going on.
Thanks everyone. Moving on to the alumni trustee post. So we've got 3 candidates. James, why don't we start off with you? If you want to give a quick background on yourself and your interest in becoming the alumni trustee, and go from there.
Sure. Thanks, and thanks to everyone else who will be making a decision at some point or another and casting a ballot. Yeah, my name is James Rowling. I'm a graduate of the School of Art. Even though I started at Cooper Union as a student in the School of Architecture, interestingly, before transferring. I am a former elementary school teacher from New York City. Grew up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. I am currently the chair of arts education at Syracuse University. I've been teaching teachers how to teach art since 2005. My first gig was teaching at Penn State University as a full-time higher ed faculty member. And I'm currently, I should mention, the president of the National Art Education Association, and which is the largest membership organization for that includes everybody from K through 12 art teachers, higher ed art teachers, art therapists, design educators. I could go on, teaching artists, and actually all of the every member of the National Art Honor Society in the United States is under our umbrella. So as far as my experience on boards, I would say, because I'm the president of the National Art Education Association, I'm also the president of that board of directors. I'm currently on the board of directors, or the board of trustees rather, at the Everson Museum of Art in Central New York. I think that those are useful bits of information or experience in terms of seeing how some well-functioning boards work. I would say also that one of my one of the main reasons why I'm considering doing this role is because of my commitment to service to, especially to students. Ultimately, everything that I learned about being a teacher, I learned first as a Saturday program instructor at Cooper Union. I was teaching 3D and sculpture. And that's actually where I first recognized that it was not just enough to be focused on my own creativity, but I found a calling to help others find their own or develop their own creative superpowers, as I like to call it. I actually typically call myself, even though I've had focused on arts and design education. When I was at Cooper Union, I minored in creative writing. I'm a creativity educator at heart, having started off in architecture and sort of being interdisciplinary. And that interdisciplinarity, actually, I also learned at the Cooper Union. I'm going to be coming back to, but I want to just tie in a little bit. I was looking at the role of the trustee by looking at some of the documents that talked about how things somewhat unraveled and the crisis that brought all that litigation and the effort to try to bring Cooper Union back to a free state again, a free tuition state again. Because I'm a first generation college student, I wouldn't be in this career. I wouldn't have found this career path if not for the Cooper Union. That commitment to student needs and to student growth and meeting students where they are is what draws me to this work. Currently, I've been involved a great deal in developing strategies for creating greater equity, diversity, and inclusion in higher education, in museums, in these venues. And I'm even back when I was at Cooper Union, that was very clearly a need, and it's one of the reasons why I'm still committed to the Saturday program. Actually, I'll be speaking there this weekend just to talk to some of the new Saturday program students. I was invited to have a conversation with Marina on a panel with Marina Gutierrez. So I'll say, the last thing I'll say, just to manage the time, is I've been on the alumni council for the last few years, and serving in the role of the Public Service Award chair, and that commitment to public service actually goes back to when I graduated from Cooper Union, because I got that was the one of the awards I walked out of the door with in terms of my public service at that time as a student. So it all ties together. It feels like it's a full circle moment. So I look forward to being able to contribute in any way that I can, given what I bring to the table.
Great. Thank you very much. And maybe just a quick question for me, given what we just heard about, I guess, some of the challenges and friction as trustee or new changes in the school, as trustee, how would you approach maybe trying to mend some of those rifts?
Well, one of the things that you can't come away from reading the whole account of what happened that brought so much turmoil to Cooper Union was that there was a definitely failure to communicate, and that's understatement. There was very clearly, as in some of the court documents, discussion of misleading misstatements, misinformation. And I can say that ultimately, especially when you're dealing with students' needs, because when students raise the alarm, it's not out of malice, it's out of need. There are needs that they're identifying that have typically been overlooked, and they're saying, please help. Now I've dealt with that here at SU. I've seen that in a lot of places, but really at the heart of it is your ability to recognize that that what is being communicated are needs that that need to be addressed, and ultimately our responsibility is to sort of figure out what's what those needs are and how best to collaborate with those who are raising those issues on addressing those needs. So I said something earlier about that, you know, one of the things I learned at Cooper Union was that poor teaching is when you fail to meet a student at the point of their need. And I took that with me as I became an elementary school art teacher. And it's never, it's a particular North Star that's never really failed me. And ultimately, especially when you think about anybody who's working on a board, it's really volunteer work. It's typically out of the, you know, you want to try to find a way to help folks to feel like they are contributing. And the best thing you can do is to help to make those bridges that allow for communication to flow, and to make sure that there, you know, that transparency reigns. That's how I would address friction, if that's the question that you're asking, Sim.
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Cool. Maybe just in the interest of time, moving on to Anthony.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you.
Well, great. Well, like James, I am also a native of Brooklyn and first generation college student. So we share some of the same experiences. I was an engineering student, graduated in 1985 with a degree in electrical engineering. I spent 7 years working in engineering for Con Edison. Eventually went back and got my MBA part-time while I was still working at Con Ed from NYU. Stayed at NYU for, stayed at Con Ed for a while because Con Ed had paid for my education. It was certainly the right thing to do, but eventually ended up in banking, spent a dozen years at JP Morgan, a dozen years at Morgan Stanley, and now I am the global head of power utilities and infrastructure at the Royal Bank of Canada. I have a team of around 100 people in investment banking, half of them in the United States, a team of people in London, Toronto, Australia. And it's clear to me that I would not be where I am today without the degree that I earned at Cooper Union. You know, the way I learned to think, the way I learned to work with others, and the way that we kind of worked as a team to get things done, you know, despite, you know, the odds and you know, that most of us grew up with, right? And it's just really created the groundwork for my success. Part of that was I've been able to give back. I've been involved with a number of charities, and I was also on the board of the Montessori school that my daughter went to, Metropolitan Montessori School. I was there through a campaign where we were looking to raise funds to build a building, and dealt with a lot of the challenges associated with spending money wisely. And there I was the treasurer, and my responsibility was to say no, right? To concentrate on the things we could achieve. And I was very happy with the success that we had there. One of my roles today is I present to boards pretty regularly about what they need to do. And we talk about a number of things, you know, cyber, we talk about diversity, inclusion, we talk about financing, and all the things that are so important in setting the governance for organizations. And, you know, I would be very proud to be an alumni trustee and help set the governance for Cooper Union. You know, we obviously have a pretty unique as an institution with the, you know, the consent decree requiring that 1/3 of the people on the board are alumni because of the contributions that we can make to the school. And you know, I know the other people that running here, James, you know, the Rachel, great candidates. So really, it's a matter of, you know, what's needed at this point. I'm sure we'd all make great trustees. I think my skill set and my financial acumen, all the work I've done, I think puts me in a good position to help the school at this time. And I think we're fortunate because we're now at a point where we have to execute, right? We have to execute flawlessly because of the work that's been done by a number of people, including our peers, right, as alumni trustee over the last decade, including most of the prominent spots on the board are by alumni trustees. So I'm honored to be here presenting. It's my third try, so I'm glad you keep inviting me back, and I hope that the third time's a charm.
Third
So
time's a
thank
charm.
you.
Margaret, you had a question for Anthony?
Sure, Anthony, one of the things that we've been involved with is the preparation of a new updated memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement with the school itself. And a lot of work was put towards that, and we're in a bit of a waiting mode as our 501c3 status is being processed. So I just wondered, how you could help advance and reinforce that process of MOA going forward. It's a little difficult question, but
Yeah, and Margaret, it's a good question, right? I think that it's obviously an important question, and probably need to spend a little bit more time on the bylaws and what the roles are. But frankly, my day job is actually negotiating transactions, right? Most of the work I do is with respect to M&A, and it is a matter of getting parties together to come up with compromises that work, and those that work well really do work in the spirit of partnership, right? Because even in any M&A transaction, it's important that a deal goes well, because even the company who's selling knows that they need to do the next deal, right? So you have to work well, you have to work in cooperation, you have to work in partnership. So Margaret, I don't have the answer, but I'd be happy to help think about a solution.
thank you.
Thank you. And finally, last but definitely not least, Rachel, your turn. Bring us home.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks to the other people who are running. James, I'm in awe of your background. I'm actually on the National Art Education Association. I'm a member, and I'm off to the Museum of Art in New York conference tomorrow. So yeah, Manny, as we call it. So very, very inspired by your background and what you're doing. My background actually is a very roundabout background. I grew up in the Cooper Union family. Some of you know this, but the class of 1948, where everybody married each other, was basically my Cooper Union family, and my grandparents were a Cooper couple. So literally I would not exist without Cooper. And Marilyn Hoffman Greenberg was a part of that circle, a small circle. So the minute I graduated, I was inducted into the alumni board. Whether I wanted to or no, she brought me in, and I was on the faculty committee before Julian with art. That was my role, and on the St. Gaudens committee, and where we nominated Julian actually. And also Emily Overman, my cousin. Not that that has anything to do with anything, but so I have a long history of being part of Cooper and understanding the ins and outs and the ups and downs, right? So Cooper Union has had many mountains up and down, and it's been a long journey I stepped away from being on the board when I moved to Seattle to go to business school. I went to Foster School of Business and sort of put my left brain, right brain together. So for work, I was an industrial designer and I worked my way up. I have managed programs of massive scale worth billions of dollars with many moving parts. The biggest one was very famous, was Better Homes and Gardens for Walmart. When you work in that kind of situation, you have to pivot, you have to learn how to communicate with people, you have to be extremely good politically, and you have to be able to motivate, especially in a situation like Walmart, which was not always the best working environment. So I would say that that was the kind of trial by fire university that, you know, you get only once in your lifetime. So I have a lot of skills in motivating, getting people to work together, the art of negotiation, getting things done quickly. Those are skill sets that I brought with me to business school. And then I went to business school, became chief operating officer of a company, started doing bankruptcies and turnarounds. Now, how did I end up the executive director of a brick museum? And in the world of STEAM education and all of that? Well, that was a left turn of going back to my roots and sort of getting back into what was important to me at Cooper and what Cooper taught me. And that really, I think, is something that happens to many Cooper Union alumni. They graduate, they don't really have a plan. They go through a lot of different journeys. And I think, you know, if we can help students understand that as part of our healing process and as part of our understanding the history of Cooper, and my goal is really, you know, how do we bring the three schools together? I think as, you know, as a trustee, I have an enormous, I'm a historian, you know, I minored in art history with Dale Harris and really learned a lot from him. And I think, you know, learning what I'm learning now, working in a small village where there was a lot of anger towards this little museum about revisionist history and how do you fix that? How do you tell the hard truths? How do you repair? How do you regain trust? How do you build authenticity in a space where there's been damage? These are things I'm very, very good at. And so I think as a trustee, I would be able to really help in that role. You know, that this idea of mending fences is something that I'm dealing with a lot right now. In terms of engagement of a community and motivating a community to support you from all different walks of life. To answer some of the questions, I just rewrote the bylaws of the museum. I'm very versed in legalese. That was my background, working in negotiating and closing deals as a business person after I graduated up from being an industrial designer. And so I really know how to work with the money people, you know, the venture capitalists, the C-suite. That's my sort of sweet spot. And I think I could really help the school from that perspective. So that's why I'm running.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Any questions from the group? Otherwise, I have one. I guess, you know, just going back to this question, you know, which we keep coming back to around, you know, free tuition, no tuition, you know, I think all of us are in the journey of seeing Cooper as a free school and going through some of the hardships, you know, in the last, you know, 10, 15 years and now where we are today. Any thoughts on how you as trustee might be able to help guide the school in the right direction and, you know, things maybe we as an alumni association or as a community could be doing better?
Yeah, this is James. Well, I'll say that, and I realize I have to couch this in terms of like what do I bring to the table with regard to this kind of work. And the thing is that whenever you're working as a trustee, or it's not something that you're doing, you're not working independently, you're working collaboratively with the other trustees. There's always a lot of discussion and debate and trying to figure out what's the best path, because of the sense of it's not just a sense, it's not just a sense, it's actually, you actually have a real responsibility to the institution that you're working on. But maybe a good sense of what you have to do to bring things into balance is it might be exemplified by like what my day was like today. So I began today teaching in arts-based research course with grad students. My area is with regard to, as I said, arts education. Then I'm a part of a planning council for a very large effort in Central New York, and it's actually something I want to talk with Rachel about, where we're building a first ever STEAM school, STEAM high school, which is drawing on public and private partnerships, about $200 million worth of it. But even though the costs have been escalating during COVID, right now we're planning curriculum, figuring out who to bring into the fold with regard to these partnerships. Once again, always trying to figure out how to bring people together to meet the need that's at hand. That's something I've been echoing a little bit, the idea that it all starts with identifying properly what the need actually is, and then figuring out how to coalesce and collaborate with folks. And then end of the day at the Everson Museum, where I was brainstorming with the new director of learning engagement, how we can bring students together from Syracuse University to work with local youngsters to help them to understand that they have pathways into the creative professions, but using the museum space as a way to make these engagements happen during the summer, and then ultimately into the next academic year. And I say all that to say that working to meet the needs that are at hand, figuring out how to bring resources into the room to meet those needs, and also figuring out how to communicate those needs and what those solutions and the brainstorm possibilities and what ifs is something that I think is all on the table when you're trying to address the very real crises that the Cooper Union faced, and as we continue to work it out together. So I'll stop there just for the sake of time and pass it on to someone else.
Rachel?
Well, I think James and I have to talk after this, because we're doing a lot of the same things. I think that I have two approaches of how I could really feel that I could lend a hand on the sort of rebuilding the coffers and bringing money back to having free tuition. Of course, it's something I believe in wholeheartedly. It's part of my whole ethos as a human being, and I wouldn't have been able to go to college probably without Cooper free tuition, and I know my grandparents wouldn't have. So it's something that's extremely important to me, and I want to do it in the memory of my grandparents. But the two things that I think I can lend a hand, one is the things that I learned from watching it done in Seattle, where my business programs were completely subsidized. And I learned, I watched the Michael G. Foster Dean from the business school there have tremendous facility in getting money to support basically any idea that he had. And I think I learned a lot from watching that process, and I feel that I could really help with that level of support. So the incubation of ideas for students, that Microsoft incubator that they had, the technology MBA program that was paid for by Amazon, everything was parceled out, and you had a sort of a tiered structure of support. And I feel like we have so many alumni that have gone to all these amazing companies that are completely unengaged from Cooper. And if we could harness them somehow and bring them back in. I mean, if we went to J. Walter Thompson and said, how many Cooper Union graduates do you hire on an annualized basis? And then through, the last 4 decades, how many of them have graduated from Cooper? What's that worth to you in terms of money? So that kind of experience, I have a tremendous amount of facility with that, having worked in the venture capital world. So I know how to do that. I watched it done very well. And I think that would be one approach. The other approach is more along the lines of what James was talking about. And that's the way that I'm working with the museum now, which is harnessing strategic partners to support STEAM education or things like that. I think STEAM is important in the conversation because Cooper Union really represents that with its 3 schools. And according to the US Labor Department, 8.8% of all new jobs in the 21st and 22nd century are going to be STEAM-based jobs. So here we have an opportunity to get companies to pay for Cooper to give them what they need, which I don't think we're capitalizing on at all. So I think there's tremendous opportunities to bring money in if done well and strategically. And it's just a question of how do we do it, and not trying to do it all at once. You have to have a little bit of a Zen attitude to it, and really having the conversation about what's important first and then what's important second. And I think if you have a plan, you can get there. Those are the 2 ways that I would go about it.
Thank you. I was going to open it up to questions. I'm recognizing that it started a little bit late. Edwin, you had sent me a question.
Let me just jump in on that one.
Go for it, please. Thank you.
So I think that Rachel and James did a great job of answering the question and giving some framework. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the board, I think we're fortunate, right, in that we've laid out a framework and we're well on our way to delivering on that. I think though that it's important now, the most important part is the execution, and what we need to do as a board is make sure that we're providing the right measurement tools, the right milestones to make sure we are executing. I think that from a distance, we seem to have done a really good job at taking expenses out, and then we have to end that, right? Because the more there's a limit to what we can do on that front. So just maybe to emphasize some of the stuff that James and Rachel talked about is how do we then accelerate the fundraising so we give us more of a margin of error on that execution. And I think that I think any one of the 3 of us would be very helpful on that. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Edwin, you had a question. I wasn't sure if it was for one of the candidates or for the 3 trustees, but do you want to ask it, and then maybe we can get some quick responses from folks?
Yeah, this was really opening it up to everyone that is, a candidates night. There's a rapid evolution in learning, and there are world-class courses and projects online today that I believe Cooper can easily adapt to and prove how it's always been and continues to be a world-class institution. So, you've talked a lot about governance, deal making, diplomacy, right? So how do you help, being that we're still in our journey to be into getting back into a full tuition program kind of scholarship, right? How do we compete with those virtual education programs, one? And two, in addition to being, kind of being back in our journey to a full tuition program, how do you institute the whole idea of a cutting edge research center, which in most institutions is what keeps the blood of newer courses, newer technologies to be able to disrupt and get into the market with some really cool and innovative ideas. So it's just two questions. One, how do you adapt to the new era of virtual learning? And two, how would you propose starting a research fund for both undergraduates and master's degrees?
I can, let me jump in just real quickly on that, simply because actually I want to tie in a little bit to something that Rachel mentioned. One of the things that I often talk about when I talk about the interdisciplinarity that I learned and gleaned from being a Cooper Union student, it's sort of exemplified in the shop, in the foundation building, where it's like a crossroads where you could see someone working on building, and if someone from the School of Art working on building a sculpture, someone from the School of Engineering working on building a model bridge, someone from the School of Architecture working on building a model. And this what ties this all together is that there's this recent survey, 1,500 CEOs globally, who identified creativity as the number one asset that they're looking for in any worker in the 21st century. And folks, I think that we actually have a leg up because we're already in that sort of like interdisciplinary cross section that allows for these odd and unusual hybrids of career paths to sort of emerge, where we sort of influence each other, rub off of one another. So I think we pick up from where we are. We actually have a leg up on a lot of places which are much more siloed. But I'll also say that I personally, I've been teaching online for the last 10 to 12 years. Taught myself to do it. I've been teaching courses on creative leadership. That notion of how you give birth to creativity, the idea that creativity is a human right, in terms of allowing folks to signify themselves, to sort of like make and transform their worlds, to signify their cultures and their communities as things that matter. Ultimately, you have to. I think you take the seedbed that we have already. I think it's relatively easy. I've just visited Arizona State University, Penn State University, where folks are developing online coursework and folks who are maybe reticent in the past to do so, more traditionally oriented faculty have been embracing it. And I've seen like a studio, the first studio-based degree in digital online photography, digital photography turned into an online degree program at Arizona State University. These are things that are doable if you sort of show those models to the faculty here and bring those models and sort of encourage that what other universities are doing and colleges are doing, we can do here too, because we have, like I said, we have a leg up in terms of our interdisciplinarity already. I think it's just a matter of bringing it home with regard to what is possible, because the models are being created as we speak. It's not, and it's just a matter of finding the right partners to bring those kinds of online degree programs into being, and which then become real revenue drivers. I've seen it happen in several different universities.
Julian?
Yeah, I would just,
But-
I would just add to that. I think that what we do have an advantage, right? In that, given what we've seen over the last few years, we've had to adapt as an organization, and that does give us a bit of a leg up in this environment. And then the second thing I would say is, when I think about Cooper Union students, I think about students that are creative, resilient, innovative, and the best thing here is, how do we figure out how to empower the students to make some of those changes, Edwin, that you discussed? Because I think that's going to be the answer for Cooper Union.
Julian, you had your
I'm
hand
going to
up.
offer an anecdote here, and it's not part of a campaign promise or any kind of pursuit. It's more of a little bit of perspective on the realities of what's just been learned over the last 2 years of the pandemic. And one thing's for certain, like remote teaching art sucks. I don't care what you say. It's like, it sucks. I mean, maybe you could teach graphic design and photography, perhaps, but like, you tried teaching a time-based art form or performance art or sculpture. It's like, what's going to happen if we go to online teaching is it's going to change the nature of the curriculum and the pedagogy altogether. The question is that a bad thing? And I think that's where we have to ask ourselves, like, we all are nostalgic for where we went to school, but this school is 200 years old. It's like, it has had so many different revolutions and focuses. And in the midst of the pandemic, I went to the Peter Cooper archive, because at the library, there's a special like inner sanctum archive where you can go and find some of his original papers. And I found these curriculum sketches and studies for the way he thought the school should be structured. And they're kooky, and I'll share them with you guys on the side. I'm not saying that we should ever publish these things, but he definitely planned for this to be a trade school. But a trade school, he was such a forward thinker. He was like, one of the biggest practices, he wanted to teach telegraphy, and it was more like almost like a school for programming, because you were learning code to not just understand how telegraphy worked, but it was like the language of it. And I'm not going to go off on that little tangent, but the school needs to, the one thing Peter Cooper did is that he was teaching, new technologies like photography, like colorized daguerreotypes. Like there was a new form of, photography, and he was interested in all the latest craft trade practices, as well as teaching, higher mathematics. The school does need to develop and evolve with the times, but we're kidding ourselves as members of the alumni council if we're going to be able to change what the school's doing.
Yeah.
All we're going to do is, you guys, the trustees, you can go shake the trees and get some money, but like, that pedagogy is what the teachers are hired for. So we got to be careful with what our aspirations are, and like, maybe we can lend some advice, but we're not going to tell them what to teach. I don't know about promoting like an all online teaching. I don't know if we, to answer Edwin's question, like, I think it's apples and oranges. Who cares about online schools? I mean, the school that we know is still a Bauhaus school. It's like, you have this sort of, coalition where people are in the same room together. It's like, that's the kind of school that Cooper Union is. It's not going to compete with great courses.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Rachel, I saw you raise your hand as well.
Yeah, so I think Julian and I are in violent agreement about the problems of teaching art online. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to online education. I've experienced horrific nuts and bolts MBA online programming, really horrific. I've had many conversations with MIT about why they are resisting it. And there are reasons why online is not always the best thing. I will say, as a small institution is doing a lot of education programs, one of the things we love about online is that it allows us to reach a lot of people. So we do our online education and we get people who stay up until 2 a.m. in order to hear about bricks. Why? I don't know, but they're calling in from Greece and Europe and strange places. Having that facility available to Cooper Union, which is a small university that not a lot of people know about, could be tremendously beneficial to the university. But I do think the hands-on, face-to-face also cannot be gotten rid of. I mean, this is such an extremely important piece with hands-on learning that we're doing with our kids, our 5th grade kids, and STEM and STEAM. There's this active play that creates innovation. And when you don't allow that sandbox play to happen, that's when, ideas fail. And so I think as a member of the board, I think that one of the things that I would focus on is how do we build the resources to enable the school to go where it needs to go and facilitate that kind of interactivity between the schools and the outside world, bringing outdoors in. The Pratt class that we just did was very successful that way. We had professors dialing in from all over the world to critique the students, but the students were working in the studio. So, you could have a hybrid situation that works very well. I don't think it's for us to say. I think it's for us to get the money, to get the tools, to allow the school to do what it does best.
Fantastic. Thank you. James, I think did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of add a little bit here, that there's actually nothing inherently sucky about online teaching. Nothing inherently. I've seen it done really, really poorly. I've seen it done really, really well. And it really does depend on, because you talked about that notion of adaptation. And this is actually an important point here, because because I think that, yes, as someone who has taught online courses, I'm not suggesting at all that you throw out hands-on courses. The adaptation is the fact that we live in a digital era, and it's going to get ever more so. And what happens is that certain kinds of coursework actually lends itself and can become, and I've seen students really benefit from the certain, if you develop it well, because what's inherently sucky is when you have to switch from a course that you plan to do hands-on and then have to do it online. If you plan a course directly from scratch to be done and executed in an online fashion, and you plan it well, it can be. I've seen students do wonderful things. Just this past summer, taught online courses to teens who because of the virtual environment, but we needed to do it because we still weren't out of COVID, and I just figured out a way of making it work for folks. But ultimately, you don't throw out one for the other. You find the courses that that lend themselves to that kind of thinking as an adaptation. Why? Because you reach audiences and reach students who might not come otherwise, and therefore you expand the tent. I think that's the possibility here that I think that we just need to hold on to. But I don't. But I also agree. That a job of the Board of Trustees is not to teach, but to help facilitate those who are doing the work. But I think it's augmented if you actually have a sense about actually how you can actually teach these courses and do them successfully.
Great. Well, I know we're starting to get later, and we've been on the Zoom for a little bit. So thank you guys all for super inspiring messages and thoughts. Really makes me excited to be part of the Cooper community. I am going to wrap things up there because I'm sure we could continue on this conversation for a while. But thank you all for running. I know for me, a tough choice, and I'm sure for many of you guys will be tough choices, but I know all of you guys are committed to helping in lots of different ways to the Alumni Association and the community more broadly. So thanks everyone, and to everybody watching this on YouTube in the future. Thanks for tuning in, and please cast your votes.
you.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.
Like,